Well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric. I'm John McDevitt, and with me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, first off, we recorded an episode yesterday. We don't normally do them 2 days in a row. We recorded one yesterday, not expecting anything to happen. It was quiet, all quiet on the Giants front, and then they signed Russell Wilson.
And we looked pretty bad at the beginning.
It's like, First of all, you said that, but I don't agree with that. We stated our opinion, and a lot of other people had the same opinion. That came out of left field.
Yeah. But first, we hit 1,000. We hit 1,000 baby steps, so we're there. So, and our 1,000th winner subscriber wins a brand new car. No.
It's this big.
A new car.
But you can tell her it's huge, right? And that's what we do anyway.
Yes. All right, so we got a lot. We got a lot to talk about. Holy crap! And we did not coordinate on jersey wear.
No. I went because yesterday I had on Jeremy Shockey's jersey, but in honor of the quarterbacks, I had to break out Eli's jersey. Yeah. You went old school linebacker, so
yeah, I'm still a defense guy. All my jerseys in my life, except for Phil Simms, I had Harry Carson, Lawrence Taylor, Antonio. You can tell I like linebackers. And
hell yeah!
I had Phil Simms too. So I don't tend to buy a lot of jerseys, but when I do, I tend to go defense. So.
There you go. Well, we know my favorite player of all time is LT. Why? Because I named my daughter Lexi Taylor so she could have the initials LT. So there you go. That's that.
You just don't want her to follow his off the field.
No. I got bigger. Trust me, I've got way bigger problems about what I don't want her doing.
All right, we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so. we've to kind of reset where we were yesterday, we were going to just kind of cover the fact that we had Jameis Winston, wondering where the Giants were going to go next. Aaron Rodgers was still being talked about, supposedly that he was going to come visit, blah, blah, blah. Russell Wilson seemed to be the odd man out. Again, the Giants haven't been overly communicative about what they've been doing or not doing. So who knew that Russell Wilson was just that close to signing with the Giants? But we stated why we thought it wasn't going to fit. You have been very clear about your feelings on this. I'm going to start with you. Your feelings again. Recap. How do you feel about the situation signing Russell Wilson after we signed a Jameis Winston and the difference in the
people were laughing at our reactions from yesterday because I think we gave off the Wayne and Garth vibe with Delaware.
Imagine being able to be magically whisked away to Delaware. Hi. I'm in Delaware.
So I think we gave off that kind of vibe because people were like, your reactions were priceless about being underwhelmed. So I want to talk about the good stuff. So there's we'll talk about the downside, the upside, and some people were mad because I focused on the downside. Let's focus on the upside first, and then we'll talk about the negative. There are pros and cons of this. So I wrote them down because I really wanted to study. I was watching videos all day. I was watching podcasts all day and clips on different analysis and opinions and all this stuff. Number one, he's not Daniel Jones. So that's the first positive. And number two is he's not Daniel Jones. Those are the first two top things. He's not Daniel Jones. We don't have to talk about Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is in the rearview mirror. 6 years of hell. He's gone. So just starting from that baseline, 1 and 2, we're way ahead of where we were in the past because I don't have to listen to it. I don't have to watch it. And we don't have to. I mean, we had Ryan Dunleavy was on Twitter today saying, again, the quarterback room hasn't improved. Don't give me that crap. Look, I'm not a Russell Wilson fan. I haven't been a Russell Wilson fan since his last 2 years in Seattle. But I'll take Russell Wilson over Daniel Jones any day. So I don't know where that, and I'll take Jameis Winston over Daniel Jones any day.
Right.
Daniel Jones can't score. He cannot. Using a joke that you would probably use if you put him in a room of hookers, he couldn't score. And with $1,000, he probably
with his contract, he couldn't even score.
He couldn't score. I mean, he can't score points. Now watch, he'll Indiana Jones and with the Colts will light it on fire. But I don't care. I don't care if he does. He's in the past. I don't want to talk about it anymore. The other positive before we get to his play is he is not expensive, and neither is Jameis. The total amount of money that they're spending on these two quarterbacks, the guaranteed money, Mike Florio reported today, it's the first time I've seen it, that Jameis got $4 million guaranteed. And so Russell has got $10.5 million guaranteed. You add that together, add that up, that's the same contract Daniel's getting with the Colts. So we're getting both those guys with the same contract value that Daniel's getting in 1 year with the Colts. So money-wise, you can't argue with this either. It's a 1-year contract for Winston. Wilson, we have 2 W's now. I'm gonna get these.
It doesn't matter.
For Wilson, you correct me though. You correct me on this. Like the time that I kept calling Stafford Matthews. So it's a 1-year deal with Wilson. It's a 2-year deal with Winston, but they're both really relatively inexpensive contracts.
Right.
They're not going to have any impact on the salary cap either this year or next year, and that's great. So let's start off with there, because I want to talk about the on the field stuff. There's good stuff there too, but did you want to react to any of that?
Well, before I react, I'm going to give you 2 numbers, and then you tell me what they are.
Yeah,
512 and 112. It's okay if you don't know.
Touchdowns and interceptions. No.
You're close. You're on a good path. But
no, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. So the quarterback room of last year of Jones, Locke, and DeVito, counting their stats from last year, right? So those 3 guys together, they've thrown a combined 112 touchdown passes. The quarterback room now for the New York Giants, Wilson, Winston, and DeVito, has thrown a combined 512 touchdown passes.
So you did add the touchdowns together. Yeah.
I'm just saying,
right,
as a group. So this idea, I've seen a couple things. They're like, is it Adam Shine? I think it's Adam Shine. I ripped him on
I saw that. You ripped him off.
Yeah, I'm like, first up, you're being an idiot. How can you possibly say the Giants screwed up? Their quarterback room is a disaster. Did you not see last year? I don't care. I don't care that you don't like. First off, look at Pittsburgh. Look at Tennessee. You could even throw Cleveland in that group right now. There are a lot of teams that didn't have quarterbacks. These guys were out there available. I'm not saying that I'm thrilled that it was Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers or whatever. The fact of the matter is, though, this is leaps and bounds above what we had last season. It doesn't even matter if they don't play very well this year. They're still probably going to throw more touchdown passes and win more games than Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito did last year. That's just what it is. So making a big deal and saying how horrible this is, you're literally discounting how shitty it was last year to say how horrible it is this year. And the options were becoming very limited. So that being said, I just think that people need to kind of step back a tad. It's okay if you don't agree with the choices and where the steps to go wherever we feel they should go and whatever. I get that. But to sit there and just complain about how bad the quarterback room is, first off, we had no quarterbacks up until 2 weeks ago. Even DeVito hadn't even signed his exclusive piece yet. So DeVito signs, he stays his restrictive piece. He's back. Then we signed 2 veteran quarterbacks. We now actually have a quarterback room that has played, that has won games, and has thrown touchdown passes. It may be a disaster, but guess what? It's a disaster. Maybe like, I don't know, like a ferry boat crashing into another boat and it did some damage and it doesn't look good versus the Titanic, which was last year.
And there's downside, and we'll get into the downside, but let's stay with the positive. The other off the field positive today is, I haven't seen the full press conference, but I saw clips and I saw a ton of tweets, but I saw clips, and Russell Wilson gave a hell of a press conference today. Now, Joe Judge gave a hell of an introductory press conference, although that doesn't mean that much. But one of the problems I had with Daniel Jones was he did not exude confidence. He did not exude charisma. He did not exude mojo, whatever you want to call it. He wasn't the guy that you'd run through the wall for. Russell Wilson just exuded confidence today. He was. I mean, whether he can play or not, we'll get into that. But he believes he can, and to me, believing is sometimes half the battle, and you want everybody else in the team to believe in you. So believe in yourself, and you get your teammates to believe in you. And he knew everybody on the team. He singled out my guy Jalen, and I'm going to die on that hill. But he knew everybody on the offense. He mentioned, he was even naming offensive linemen. He was naming, Theo Johnson. He was naming all these guys. He knows the team. He exuded confidence, and he gets it. He's been here. He's been in the league. He knows what it's like to get a team in the playoffs, to win playoff games, and get to a Super Bowl. So that's a huge selling point too with him.
So I know there was some negativity on the site, bigblueinteractive.com, about Wilson signing, and then even the things you just brought up about him knowing players, and it was kind of blown out of proportion. I don't know what some people expect him to do. Show up and just, basically say, yeah, I'm on my last legs, and thank God they were willing to give me a contract. Nobody wanted me. I mean, what do you want him to say? And then what do you want the media to ask these guys? What do you want them to ask the Giants? Hey, are you so desperate that you signed Russell Wilson? Well, he sits right there, by the way, and you're going to ask him questions. That's not how that works, right? That's just not the way you communicate. And first off, again, you can shit on the idea because it's not what you want for your idea. But the fact of the matter is, there aren't very many choices out there. Once the season ended, we talked about this.
We talked about this over and over again.
Free agency, there was nothing at quarterback.
We didn't really want Aaron Rodgers, but he was the best. It was the best of a bad number of bad options.
Exactly. So I don't have a problem with what he said. I think he came in very positive, and that's needed. I think the big part, and I think you're going to get to that in a second here, is really how the Giants handle it going forward. Not necessarily the draft. We're going to cover that. But once camp begins, if they just go like they did last year and they just anoint one person.
Well, let's get into that. That's
a different story. That's a different story.
Because I want to talk. There's a lot to unpack. This changes a lot of things. I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to save that because I think that's an important component of where we're going with this. All right. On the field stuff. You want to talk about that?
Absolutely. I mean, you just slapped me down like Alex.
No.
I'm messing. I'm messing.
Save it for later.
I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you.
All right. So Russell, and I did more research into this today, and it confirmed what I thought. But there was a really good podcast. I wish I could remember. If I can remember, we'll link to it in the description. But there was an outstanding discussion about Russell Wilson coming to the Giants, and it was not on ESPN. It was a podcast with two guys that normally cover the draft. It was outstanding, and they confirmed what I felt. And he's a really good deep passer, and he attacks the sidelines, and he's at the top of the league in that. And he's got actually the number one stats in some of those departments in terms of throwing the ball down the field with accuracy and I think balls over 20 yards. He was way up there in just 11 games, 11 regular season games. He had the one playoff game, but they normally don't include the playoff stats in these stats. So he's really good at throwing the ball down the field. He's not good at throwing the ball, or he's unwilling to throw the ball over the middle. I heard John Schmelk say today, his unbelievable stat, that he only threw we lost John here. I want to make sure he's back. Are you back?
I'm sort of back.
Okay. Okay. I'll continue. So he only threw the ball 22 times in 11 games in the 10 to 20 yard range over the middle. So it's not even he can't throw intermediate. He won't throw those intermediate things. So he's a big check down guy. You're back. Okay. He said, now he flipped.
No, it's this goddamn brace. I went to do something and I knew. I'm like, oh shit.
No, it's all right. But he's a big check down guy, or he's a big throw down the field and get completions. But what the negative on him, or the positive on that part of it is this. Is what I've said. Slayton's going to love him. Malik Neighbors is going to love him. Jalen Hyatt is going to love him. Those guys are going to love the vertical game. They're going to, and he's going to, and that's why I was really interested to me that he mentioned Jalen Hyatt by name and said he's talked to him and he wants, so he knows. I expect if Jalen Hyatt can't do anything with these two quarterbacks, then Jalen Hyatt's not going to make it in the NFL. So
agreed.
So my concern is because he doesn't throw over the middle, and some of that's probably related to his height. He's 5'11", maybe 5'11" on a good day. Has issues seeing over the line unless he rolls out, and that's why Pittsburgh rolled him out a lot. I'm convinced that they would roll him out so he could see better. And he will throw over the middle in the red zone. So, but when between the 2020s, he doesn't throw a lot over the middle. And if defenses know that, it limits your offense a great deal. Wan'Dale Robinson may disappear completely. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like Wan'Dale, but part of my issue with Wan'Dale or defensive Wan'Dale was we didn't have a quarterback that would get him the ball the way he should have had more plays like he did against the Colts. And if you saw Wan'Dale against the Colts, that's what I expected this year when Drew Lock actually threw the ball down the middle to him instead of these 1 yard little runs, and you hope he breaks 6 tackles to pick up the first down. So my concern with him is it's very hard to sustain offensive drives when you can't hit those intermediate throws. So it's kind of like you've got to hope you get those big chunk plays on the outside or your offense is going to stall. And I hate to make this comparison because it's people are going to think I'm being really negative, but you remember when Kent Graham was here, right?
Please.
Right.
Eric, come on.
Yes. All right. So remember the Kent Graham's thing was either the big bomb
deep down the field or that's pretty
or
much
that was about it. So like they would upset and I think it was the Oilers before they moved. But remember there was the upset where he hit Mike Sherrard on a big play for a touchdown, and there was the I think he was the quarterback when they upset.
We beat the
Cleveland.
Broncos. We knocked the Broncos undefeated with.
And the Broncos with Toomer.
Yeah.
So Kent Graham was the all or nothing deep ball guy, and if you didn't hit the deep ball, you didn't really matriculate down the field.
Nice.
That's my concern with Russell is he's still very accurate with the deep throws and the deep sideline throws, and again the receivers will love him for that. And again he'll get the ball in their hands where they'll run after the catch and do damage. But I'm concerned that because you ignore the middle of the field, it's going to make it very hard to consistently move the ball. That's my take. And the last thing is he's run for 5,000 yards in his career, which is really a huge number, but he's not that player anymore. So you're not going to get any of these RPOs. You're not going to get any of these design scrambles with him. If he moves, it's because it's a designed rollout or he's running away from pressure. And you're going to get a lot of sacks with him. That's the other thing. He's always taken a lot of sacks.
And that's gone up a little bit over the last couple of years where he does the running around behind the line of scrimmage versus taking off and running.
But you believe it or not, if you look at his stat numbers, the stat numbers are actually worse in the past. So I thought the same thing. But if you look at his stat numbers in Seattle, they were bad too.
But look at the number of attempts versus more recently. You know what I mean? They've reduced the number of attempts. You're not wrong, but he does. That's where he tends to take the sacks now. He runs around and waits and then still takes the sack. The big thing is, I think he threw 5 interceptions last year.
He doesn't turn the ball over. He does not turn the ball over.
That's a big thing. The problem with Wilson, there has been a noticeable decline over the last few years. Is some of that related to circumstance? Steelers with Arthur Smith were a run-first team, but if you also take a look at what they had Pickens, who was a bit of a headache. They had a washed-up Mike Williams. They have Calvin Austin. They had Van Jefferson. They did have Pat Freiermuth. And then they have 2 backs, but the backs were more running backs versus catching the ball. Najee Harris isn't catching the ball much. Warren was kind of maybe the little bit quicker guy and whatever, but they're not really throwing the ball to the backs that often. So that offense was very constrictive. And so the deep ball was kind of all Russell ultimately had. They didn't have a lot of motion plays. They didn't have a lot of crossing patterns. The Giants are a very big motion offense that just failed horribly because you had a quarterback that couldn't do it. That was Daniel Jones.
Right.
If you can manufacture, and you just pointed it out, right? With Wan'Dale Robinson, the key to Wan'Dale is don't throw it to him where he turns his back to the defense to catch the ball because he's going to get obliterated. Right. He's got to be able to catch it on the move where he's getting away from people. You can't catch on a wide receiver screen where he stands there like this. He catches it and turns around, and 3 guys are coming at him because every one of those guys is significantly bigger than he is.
Do you remember when we were talking about in our preseason, and we thought that yards after the catch was going to be a really big part of this offense, and that Daniel Jones was never going to be the guy, but if it was going to work for him, they were going to throw him the ball and hopefully it would be an accurate football, and they would do yards after the catch.
Yes, a de
Now,
facto
we
running game.
got that against the Colts. Now, granted, the Colts missed a lot of tackles,
Sure.
but we got the type of offense that you and I were talking about in the Colts game when the ball got to the receiver where the receiver could do something after the catch. So it wasn't just the Colts missed tackles, and that was a big part of it, but the receiver got the ball in position to do yardage after the catch, and Daniel couldn't do that. And what I think you're saying is Russell Wilson might be able to do that.
Well, I think he might be able to do it. I also think that the last couple of years he hasn't been with teams that did that. They didn't use that. They didn't have the weapons for that. The Giants will. Assuming that everything goes the way that you would expect it to go for Dayball's offense, the way he was able to manufacture things in 22, even though Jones had only 15 touchdown passes, 15 touchdowns, seven rushing touchdowns, you put a quarterback with a better, I won't say necessarily a better arm, but more accurate, more anticipation in throws. You can expect those 15 touchdowns to be more like 23, 24, 25. The rushing touchdowns are going to come down, and we'll get to something else. That's why I have an idea about who they're going to draft. But I think there's a really good opportunity here. Again, but Russell has to win the job, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So, but there's a lot of options here that I think could really work for them. Daniel Jones just couldn't do it. But I will say there was one game that he actually did fairly well this past year, and that's the Seattle game. So if you go back to the Seattle game, they were doing plays. They were getting guys open. Jones was hitting the guys. That's the way to off for a while. There wasn't the entire game. It was a pretty good portion. I want to say end of first through maybe the third, and then we bogged down in the fourth, and Seattle got back in the game. And if it was for the blocked field goal, who knows what would happen. But that offense was able to move. And you can see why Daboll and Shane behind closed doors are probably like, if we just had a guy who could just follow the game plan, he just has to be halfway decent. We'll get better results. So I think that's what they're counting on with Russell Wilson.
Right. And the other thing too, so other people are focusing on this, and justifiably and understandably, that he started 6-1 with Pittsburgh, and he was 0-5 down the stretch, including the playoff game. Oh, yeah, let's get to that in a second. And John Schmelk brought up a great point today that in the last 5 games, 2 were at Baltimore, including the playoff game. One was Eagles, and one was Kansas City. The other one was Cincinnati against a bad Cincinnati defense. That one is less defensible, but their schedule down the stretch was also murderous too. And you have to go into Baltimore twice, including a playoff game, and you're playing in Philadelphia. That's not easy. He'll get used to it this year, though. We're going to see a lot of the same teams, I think, in our schedule this year. So, on the quarterback,
Jameis
Winston. I got to get these quarterbacks' names straight. A lot of this is my opinion. A lot of this is these guys only sign when they're actually in the area.
Correct. And
some of them are on vacation. So just so you know, when these deals get done, the agents get the deal done. It's not like the old days. Oftentimes, they may come in for a visit like he did, but he didn't sign a contract when he came in for a visit.
And I have an answer to why I believe that he hasn't.
And then it also may be they wanted the press moment. They may have wanted Wilson to be first.
That could have been, but I actually think Jameis is doing a media thing, I believe, for some sort of celebrity golf combo.
Okay, there you go.
He's been doing that. So I think that's where he is right now.
Right. So as silly as the signs, we'll see, and some people have even gotten confused by this with fans, reporters, and people on the site, is you will see a player signs with the Giants, but really what it is, it's they've agreed to terms. And then 2 weeks will go by, and we've signed so many guys that people forgot that we signed the guy, and someone will come on the site and go, we just signed this guy. No, we signed him 2 weeks ago. He just actually signed the contract now. So we had a moderator the other day pin a thread on somebody that had already signed. I think it was Stinney, but it had just he just got in there to sign it. And so don't pay too much attention. I got asked that in a thread today too. That doesn't mean anything. That just, when do they get in, and somebody asked today too, why haven't they done a press conference with Jameis, isn't that pretty telling? He hasn't signed yet,
Right.
so they're going to have a press
can't do,
conference
yeah, they
until he
can't do that.
signs.
Do
Yeah.
you think, in your opinion, do you think they basically let him know that we're probably signing Russell will or Rogers, whatever it was, that hey, we are going to be bringing another guy in, so you just understand that we will be bringing another guy in as well. Do you think they told him that
It's a
outright?
great question. Chris Sims was asked it today by Mike Florio, and Chris said he would guess that he was told, but he doesn't. Again, Chris has got connections with the Giants, obviously, but he was just speculating too, because Mike Florio was going, that Jameis is this really positive guy, but if you you gave him truth serum, you'd want to find out what he really felt today after he found out that, So that gets into what you were talking about, though, and maybe we should talk about it now. Do the Giants allow an open and fair competition? The way that this was handled today and the contract strongly suggests that Wilson's going to be the starting quarterback during the OTAs start. So when they go into spring OTAs, I don't think it's going to be Tommy DeVito under center. Maybe, but I doubt it.
I doubt it.
If it does, it's going to last a day. Will they have an open competition? Now, Breer reported that he's been told, I don't know who's been told by it, or I don't know. You don't ever know if these reporters are making this stuff up. I don't know. But he's under the impression that there's going to be an open competition. I hope there's an open competition because people are going to, there's people that strongly disagree with the statement. I would not be shocked if Jameis looks like the better quarterback. Now, if I was a betting man, Wilson's going to be the starting quarterback on opening day for a variety of reasons. But I would not be shocked if Winston, in a true open competition, looks better. And I hope it is an open competition.
I would think so. I think the contracts are pretty interesting too. As you just said, it's certainly geared for Russell, especially with the amount of incentive pieces, right? The amount of incentive pieces are got to be tied to wins, production, possibly even making the playoffs, things like that to get to 21.
Right.
Jameis's incentives aren't as big. Thus, you get the feeling that the Giants weren't assuming his things are going to be a little bit different.
But it's not too far off, though. Wasn't it 16 up to 16 for him?
But that's over 2 years. That's over 2 years.
2 years. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
And then there's incentives built into each.
Right.
So, but the interesting part is the 2 years. So the Giants are kind of counting on Jameis as possibly being at least the backup for not only this year but next year as well.
Like Tyrod Taylor was.
And
remember when they brought in Tyrod? It was 2 years.
But in this case, Wilson's, it's kind of a 1 year. It's 1 year and that's it. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the draft, and that might change everything. If Wilson has a good year and the Giants didn't draft anybody, they might re-sign him and keep him for another couple of years. Who knows? Don't do that, but that could happen. It's interesting though. The landscape there with those two, the Winston piece, it is interesting that nothing's really been said by the Giants, and you haven't officially signed him. You're not going to talk about him because he could easily just go, I don't want to sign this. So, but at the moment, that's the way it sounds. I have to assume you told him, because talk about getting off on a really bad foot. Hey, come on board. Okay.
That's why I would.
And then next week we sign somebody else and be like,
I would hope they would do that.
I would have to say they did. I mean, because Winston, but at the same time, we talked about this yesterday, and I'm tired of everybody acting like one choice is the better choice than the other choice, and why did you better get this guy? Nobody was beating down the door to get Jameis Winston signed. Nobody. Cleveland, where he was playing, didn't do it. Pittsburgh doesn't have a freaking quarterback. Mason Rudolph is their quarterback. They're not going after him. They weren't going after Russell Wilson either, who they had in there. So we know essentially we're kind of in that one man's treasure is another man's, or one man's trash is another man's treasure. That's where we're at right now. It's all based on circumstance, which, by the way, the draft's like that too. Some players might totally flame out somewhere else, but if they had been in a different situation with the different setup, they might have been a better player. It's all about where you are. These guys have a track record, but yeah, open competition is where we're at.
Well, and Jameis is very toolsy. And what I mean about that is if you're, again, all these, because we're in draft season, everybody wants the quarterback with the attributes, the perfect attributes, the big, strong arm, mobile, etc., etc. You might dislike Jameis. You might think he's a horrible quarterback, but he still has those tools that you say, and you see the productivity if he cuts out the mistakes. So he still has a monster arm, and he can make wonderful throws down the field too. He's another guy, downfield thrower. He's very good throwing the ball down the field. He throws for a ton of yardage. He didn't as much last year in Cleveland, but if you look at on a game-by-game pace over his career, he throws for a ton of yardage, and he throws for a ton of touchdowns. He throws a ton of interceptions. So Brian Daboll, if it's an open competition, he's got to weigh command of the offense. He's got to weigh turnovers. And again, Cy loves to talk about this. The number one factor in determining win and loss is turnovers.
Right.
So you've got Wilson, who doesn't turn the ball over, and you've got Winston, who historically is a turnover machine with the interceptions. Except that one year he was under Sean Payton, and he went 5-2 before he tore his ACL, and he had 14 touchdowns and 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
If they could get that out of him, then that would be great. But so he's got to weigh that versus Winston will throw the ball to every part of the field, including the defenders. But Wilson will avoid the middle of the field. So there's trade-offs here. So it's going to be very interesting. Again, the money says the money contract, but the money, if you're betting, says Wilson's going to be the guy. It's going to be very interesting as we get into the preseason and the training camp and people watch these guys play. We have not had a real quarterback competition and controversy as Giants fans in a long, long time. I think we'd have to go back. How long do we do?
Well,
Ken Graham and Kerry Collins? Is that how far back you have to basically?
No, because at that point,
Warner and Eli Manning, maybe.
Well, not really, because they pretty much gave it to Warner right out of camp. I mean,
but you had 2 quarterbacks, and when do you make that?
You knew one was going to supplant the other. Yes,
right.
I would think you're not far off, because it really wasn't Graham. It was kind of a Graham, Cannell, Collins. There were the 2, and then it went to Collins. You brought this up, so I'm going to bring it back to you. I'm going to ask you this, because it's comparable in the differences in the 2 guys. This is more reminiscent to me of 91. This is Haas Sims, just not with as good.
I like to make that analogy, but those guys were so good. But yeah.
Well, we say they're so good, but Hostetler only had the end of 90 to prove how good he was. I mean, he wasn't, we're not
including a Super Bowl.
He quarterbacked a Super Bowl team. He was not the reason they won the Super Bowl. The Giants were 10-0 with Phil Sims.
Yeah, but he won that game with a concussion. He won the Super Bowl.
I understand. That's still semantics to what we're talking about.
All right.
But where it's more comparable, right? Sims was older.
Yep.
He used to be mobile, but he was a little less mobile.
Right.
While they're not exactly the same thing, Russell is the older, but he's still kind of mobile, but his passing pieces are a little bit more limited. He's deep down the field. His shorter range stuff relies on the offensive line to create space because he can't see over the line as easily. He can't get the short stuff as easy. He's got to drop deeper back, and the line's got to keep people clear up the middle. Teams are going to pressure the Giants up the middle with Russell Wilson at quarterback because they're going to want to take his lanes away.
Right.
Jameis Winston, on the other hand, is the big guy in the backfield. He can see over the top. He's gonna throw it deep. They're gonna rush more from the outside coming in.
Correct.
So where I have a problem with the competition is you're asking your offensive team, your line, your players to kind of almost play a different type of offense depending on who's in there and create the competition between the two to see which one's going to win.
Yes. No, you've made that point earlier. That's one of the points that you made earlier, and you said they probably won't sign him. You said this because they're different style quarterbacks. So yes, I mean, so that may be a factor in all this too. It's just gonna be interesting. I just have to throw this out because it's in the back of my mind. One of the funniest things I ever saw in training camp back in Albany was when Kent Graham was the starting quarterback, but we had signed Kerry Collins. And you went to Albany, and the only jerseys they were selling were Kerry Collins jerseys, even though Kent was the starting quarterback. So and the players came out, and they walked right by the jerseys too. So Kent knew right away he was that he was on the way out, because all they were selling were Kerry Collins jerseys.
Well, you were talking about a minute ago. You were like, "Well, DeVito might be at OTAs for like the first day and then moved out." It reminds me of the story about 81 rookie season LT coming in, and the Giants had a linebacker. I believe his name was McLaughlin. He was the outside linebacker, and he knew within like the first few plays of practice that LT was going to be taking his spot.
Yeah,
he even stepped aside. He's like, "Go ahead."
I think George Young Parcells tells that story. They say they didn't even have to tell him to walk off the field.
He just knew
He just knew. I'm out of here. I'm out. So, and then before we go on to the draft, because I want to answer questions and stuff like this, I think we just have to, again, I don't want to harp it on too much, but I think we have to address one of the elephants in the room. Is this wasn't the plan. There's no way. And I saw this theme constantly throughout the day on talk show after talk show after talk show, them saying, it was funny because they sounded like you and I. They were saying they met, in early January when they sat down. This wasn't the plan that they came up with. So I think, they sold Mr. Mara on, we can go after Matthew Stafford. And if that doesn't work out, we'll go after Aaron Rodgers. But if all of that else fails, we'll be able to get Cam Ward. And and now, Shedeur might not even be there. So part of this tells me, there's a good quote. Part of what happened with signing Wilson, I still strong in the back of my head, thinks that this is a reaction to the Giants thinking that Shedeur might not be there. Now, he very well may be there, and if he gets by the Giants, he may drop a ways, and people will go, see, I told you. But if he gets by Cleveland and he gets by the Giants, he could drop. But I could see Cleveland taking him, and part of me thinks that this signing is also in case of emergency break glass moment for the Giants, because if they do like Shedeur a lot, and I don't know if they do, but if they really, really like Shedeur and Shedeur gets taken away from them, then this clip always comes to mind when Mara finds out that even Ward is off the table.
What happened, Ted? What went wrong?
The oil pressure. I forgot to check the oil pressure. When Kramer hears about this, the shit's gonna hit the fan.
Watch that oil temperature. What the hell's he doing up there? Stryker, that plane can't land itself. It takes a pilot who can handle pressure.
So it's like Mara going to Shane, what the hell is going on? What are you guys doing? Because you told me there was a plan. What's going on? So I like your reaction to this. I can't imagine John Mara he's got to feel great about this, because it went from Stafford, Rodgers, Cam Ward, and now we're talking about Winston and Wilson now. So I mean, this can't be the route that they wanted to go, right?
I no. But I do think there's a portion of it that is yes, and that was we're getting veterans. We're going to get some veterans, and we're going to get some good, guys who have produced in the NFL, veterans. We're not going to go with a couple of guys that just, if anything happens to the starter, who shouldn't have been a starter, by the way. Right. But if anything happens to the starter, we got nothing. That's 2 years in a row that the Giants basically, because Taylor backing up Jones, you had an injury guy at quarterback, backed up by a guy who tends to get injured every time he plays, backed up by a guy who had never played in the NFL. You went into the next year with a guy coming off injuries, who's had injuries before, backed up by a guy who's barely played over time, backed up by the other guy who only played for the first time the year before, and he really played when you were playing a bunch of teams that at the end where they were bad and you're bad and nobody cared.
Right. You
went into this season very poorly stacked at quarterback. We talked about it. You mentioned all off season how much no. Time out. No, give me the brown cans. Try getting another beer delivered to me. Give me some kind of sissy drink. I was like, what is that? You went into it, looking at the way you had it, and you've got guys that It just was a poorly put together quarterback group. It was just horribly put together. So now you're going, we need veterans. We don't know who's going to start. I think the plan is to get a rookie, and we'll talk further about that because I have an idea now. I think I know what they're doing. The one thing right now is too many people are tied to Shedeur Sanders. Is it possible the Giants are still going to take him if he's sitting there? Yes. Do I think that's what they're going to do? No. I think the plan all along was there's two guys that when you keep saying the word process, perfect. You say the word process, right? The process was last year, stick to the fact that, thank you. Stick to the fact that my son who's delivering his middle name, Eli, after Eli Manning.
So you got your kids delivering your booze.
I had to. Well, he's a senior in high school. He didn't open it. He just brought it to me. I'm a bad parent. But anyway, I'm a good parent. I'm a parent of like so many kids that we're on the back end, whatever.
Hey, my neighbor has his kids mixing his drinks for him. So
listen, we're a blended family. We have 9 kids all together. We're on the last couple in high school. The fact that I'm still alive says a lot.
Yes,
but anyway,
God bless you.
So now you've got quarterbacks now that you can kind of count on a little bit, right? Like the guys before, you just couldn't. You absolutely could not. It was a horribly put together. You said you were going to go. You hated your quarterback essentially. You know, you're like, we got to find the guy. I love these rookies. You know, full blown.
They said it on national television.
Full blown love. Oh my God, would you trade up for him? And Daboll's like jumping. You mean Daniels? Of course. And he's like, no, I was actually talking about May, but that doesn't even matter. You know, so he flips out. Then you do a thing where the GM is talking to his kid, and his kid goes, "I'd take Daniels." You know, great. You look awesome. Maybe the kid should be the GM. So, but then you don't draft anybody. You don't draft anybody. Yeah. Then you go into the season like you love the guy that all offseason you were like you essentially were kicking to the curb. I mean, he was the aunt in Vacation. You put the dead body up on top of the car and you're just driving around. But guess what? She wasn't dead. She had a pulse. You're throwing her back in. You go, we love you. That's what they did with Daniel Jones. And like that just died. This year they've gone veteran. I still think they're going rookie, but I don't think it's such a done deal at 3. Back to where I lost because of the beer. I apologize. The process last year, they made a big point about, thank you. The process was, we knew that there were a couple quarterbacks that they ranked really, really, really high. And they were okay even if there were some players technically rated above them, quarterback position superseded, they would be willing to trade up to get one of those guys.
Right.
After that, it was stick to the board. If that's the case this year, if the board is so significantly stacked that 2 guys, and I think there are just so much better than everybody else, including the quarterbacks minus Cam Ward, I think the Giants at 3 are sitting pretty. As I mentioned a couple of shows ago, I'm not saying I'm right. One person got mad at me because I dictate to people that I'm right. As I was saying, what I felt was like, I would rather the draft come to them. Don't make a move to go do something, because guess what? You're the goddamn Costanza of the NFL. Every move you make is wrong. So just sit there, let it come to you, and it's either going to be Carter or Hunter's going to be sitting there. That gives you the option to trade. That gives you the option to draft those guys. Mm-hmm. But there's so much, and that only becomes possible by having the 2 veteran quarterbacks on your team.
Well, we talked about getting Rodgers was going to be my phrase, stupidity insurance. So it would prevent the Giants from doing something really dumb like drafting Dart at 3. So Wilson and Winston are the lesser policy of the stupidity insurance. So it prevents them from doing something and being forced to do something because, and we weren't the only one. Again, I saw this constantly today, again, on ESPN panels, on NFL Network panels, on podcast panels. They were all saying, oh my goodness, the Giants, if they had not brought in some veterans, their hands might have been tied and they might have been forced to do something at 3 that they might not want to do. And that's exactly what you and I were talking about, that they might be forced into that. Now, some people still, I will not completely write off the possibility that Shedeur is off the table at 3. I'm leaning more in your direction, and we'll talk about that. But I don't think he's completely off. I think they have to get a quarterback of the future either this year or next year. Obviously, preferably it would be this year. But now their hands aren't tied. So this gives them more flexibility to do something that they might normally do, and that's what you're talking about. The 2 clear-cut quote unquote sure things. And as we've talked about, like with Evan Neal, there's no sure thing. But the two sure things in this draft are Carter and Hunter. So one of those two guys are going to be there, assuming Ward goes first, which everyone's assuming now. And if Ward did land us, we're going to draft. I would draft Ward no matter what. Even
without a doubt.
Draft. So what was one? And I don't want to go off on this tangent because I don't buy it. There were a couple of reports today, by the way, that Tennessee might not be completely out of listening to trade offers. I don't know where that's coming from. I don't buy it. I think they're pretty locked in on it. Maybe it's because they signed Tim Boyle or I don't know if you saw that. Tim Boyle.
I did. I saw they signed.
By the way, speaking of our quarterback room, Tim Boyle got signed before Drew Lock. Drew Lock.
Yeah, you pointed that. I saw that.
Yeah, Drew Lock's still out there. How bad is your quarterback? If Drew, I mean, he's Tim. Anyways, let's not dwell on that. So I think they still could. But so let's assume right now Ward's going 1. Now it doesn't matter as much what Cleveland does at 2 because of your quarterback room, if they did take Shedeur, you just take the best player on your board between the two. Or like you said, if somebody gives you a ransom, then you trade down.
Sure. I mean, especially if you get something, if you get a 1 next year, the Giants almost have to do that, unless you are so committed to whoever it is. The funny part will be what the Giants value more. Because technically, either one of the two spots, Carter at basically edge, I hate that term because it used to be just outside linebacker. Now it's edge, or you go Hunter at corner. Either one of those two spots for the Giants, they have players at, or they just acquired players at those positions. Not meaning that they're fully done, but I'm saying they went and got guys. So it depends on which one is just that much better. Hunter gives you the two-way option. He gives you some offensive ability. Definitely gives you the special team or the defensive back. He could play special teams as well.
No.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is his ability is there.
I know. But
Carter brings you the ability, and Patty Trahan, give credit to her, she was on last night. She brought up the fact that the Giants have always had, when in their heyday, they've had multiple guys from the outside that can rush. So when you look back on it, when we had Strahan on one side, you had O.C. Umenyiora. We also got a Matthias Kiwanuka. Then you had a Justin Tuck get mixed into that. Tuck could come on the outside. He could go onto the inside. Then we had JPP. So we always had multiple guys. You would get multiple guys on the D line. Or those guys would be edges in our current system. So Carter can be a game changer. He does have some things that are questionable still. He's not so great at the point of attack against the run, and he tends to be more reactive than instinctive. So far, he waits till his eyes see things before he goes and chases it down.
Right.
That part is slightly concerning, but his athletic ability is so good and his pass rush is so good.
Well, the thing is,
he's a game changer.
He blows by people. He's work. You remember Tecmo football?
Of course I do. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
You remember how like Bo Jackson?
Yeah, Bo Jackson a ball, and you're going
Lawrence
crazy.
Taylor was at a different speed in Tecmo.
Yep.
He's like at a different speed than everybody. I want to address Dave's question here in a second. But Carter's at a different speed. It's like Tecmo where everybody's running at one speed and Carter's at another. You can't go wrong. I should knock on wood here. You shouldn't go wrong with either player. So if the Giants come out with either of those two guys, it's a home run. Now, to address Dave's point here, this is the issue, Dave. So we're being fairly positive tonight. But if you want me to be negative here, the Giants still have the 4th worst quarterback situation in the NFC East. So you've got to fix the quarterback long term, or we're not going to catch the Commanders and the Eagles. And I'm not even sure we're going to get past the Cowboys this year. Again, people have different opinions on Dak Prescott, but he's a proven commodity still over an 37-year-old Russell Wilson, 37-year-old Russell Wilson, and a Jameis Winston that is an interception machine. So your question is correct. Drafting a quarterback right now does not help them win immediately, but it provides hope. And Shane and Dable also have to sell hope. So they can't just sell. So there's two things that'll save their jobs. One is getting anywhere near 500. And the other is if the fan base feels like there's hope, that there's something to hang your hat on and go, you know what, we're building towards something. The defense is starting to get better. We know we have a rookie quarterback. We understand what that's like. Giant fans, I'm afraid social media has dumbed us all down, but Giant fans still are bright enough to figure out that if you got a rookie quarterback, it's going to take time. That the Jaden Daniels of the world are an anomaly. So you still need to get somebody in the building that makes Giant fans feel like it's. Let me put it this way: Wilson and Jameis are a Band-Aid, and it's not going to stop the bleeding. We got to get a quarterback at some point.
Yes. And to Dave's point, though, I'm going to add to it. The Giants didn't make any moves this offseason that was designed necessarily to just support the fact that we're building for the future. You spent a shit ton of money on your secondary. You are expecting your defense to turn it around.
But they're all young. They're all young guys.
That's my point, though.
Yeah.
I understand that. I'm not saying that they're not building for the future. You don't spend that kind of money on young guys like that in the secondary thinking that I'm just doing it for 3 years from now because their contract's going to run out.
Right.
You spent money to win now. You shored up that secondary because what did John Mara say when the season was over? We got to fix the defense. They knew they needed a quarterback, but he was pissed at the defense. What did you do?
We all were, yeah.
What did you do? You fired the defensive backs coach, so we don't know what was happening behind the scenes. I don't like Bowen so far, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt to this. I think he tried to run a hybrid of the defense that was already there without changing everything on everybody, and I don't think that worked. They've now gone and gotten guys, so you don't really need to carry over whatever because you've changed out a lot. You're going to change out the defensive line still. What's coming up in the draft, the Giants are going to add at least one and possibly two defensive linemen throughout that draft. You're going to have to. You added some free agent guys that can help shore up possibly, but a real true playmaker forward, those are again, look at the deals. You've got, I'm going to get his name wrong. Robinson Smith, whatever the hell his name is. Roy Robinson, whatever.
Roy Robertson.
There you go. Thank you.
Harris?
Harris. No, it doesn't matter.
Right. One of the hyphenated guys we have.
And the guy we got from New Orleans. Those are short-term deals. Those are just to help you this year. That's to win. The draft is for the ongoing growth. They signed guys to freaking win. They've got veteran quarterbacks to win some games. I'm not saying win a Super Bowl, so don't anybody say I'm trying to say that. Dave makes a great point, and I've said this over and over again. You can pound the table, you can say what you want, you can complain all you want. The fact of the matter is Shane and Daboll have jobs, and their jobs rely on them winning. You might not like it, and you might think they should have been fired, and I might think they should have been fired, but they weren't. So their job is to win, and that's what they've sold on whatever they're going to do. What they've done so far this offseason is to give them a chance to win. The draft is either going to give them a home run early and then a whole bunch of depth to build and go forward. That's going to be Shane's way of staying here long term.
Right.
Dayball's is to win. He's got to win the games. Shane has to win the offseason and the draft.
And Hunter and Carter will help immediately in the immediate
exactly. And they could be like, we're talking potential superstar players.
But and again, this was brought up. First time I've actually heard a national media guy really go into this. Again, I'm not a big fan of his, but Mike Florio was talking about it today. Wow. He specifically brought up Mara when talking about this. He said around the league, there are some owners that act as GM more than others. But he said when it comes to the quarterback, most of them will get involved in the decision making.
Sure, of course.
That the owner has to sign off on the quarterback situation. If you're going to draft somebody, the owner has to sign off on it. So I have complained in the past that Mara should shut his mouth in public about these things and that he's had a bad impact or suspected that he's had a bad impact on things like the Barkley contract. However, Mara may step in this situation in a positive sense and say, you know what? I understand that you're fighting for your jobs, but we also have to think about the long-term interests of the New York Giants. And quarterback is very much on the table. Now, if you don't like Dable and you don't like Shane, and the Giants draft Carter or Hunter that's the perfect scenario because Harder and Hunter.
Careful.
Yes, I know. I almost did that last night too.
Very slowly separate those
yes,
two.
I know. Let's separate. Slow down. Separate. Hunter and Carter will be here no matter who the coach is. Okay, they will be part of any new scheme, new system, new defensive coordinator. They're that good. They will be here no matter who gets fired. That's not true of the quarterback. If you draft a quarterback, they draft Shedeur Sanders, and you fire them, you may get coaches that don't even want to come here because of the quarterback situation. So if you don't like Dable and you don't like Shane, and you think they're going to be gone, or you want them gone, then you want Carter or you want Hunter. You don't want the quarterback. Right. You don't even want the quarterback in the second round.
But see,
you don't even want the quarterback in the second or third round because if you want those guys gone, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then one thing I just want to throw this because I'll forget. You mentioned earlier, like 5 minutes ago, I have visions of, say you draft Carter at 3, and again, other people are saying get the quarterback later in the second round. But what if you because there's going to be a bunch of really, really good defensive tackles that are going to be there at the top of the second round. And some of those guys should have gone in the first round. What if you get what if you get Carter, the best pass rusher in the draft, one of the best edge rushers to come out in a while?
Sure.
You get him and you get an awesome 3-technique defensive tackle next to Dexter. Imagine what that does to the defense. Think about our defense at that point. Sure. With that secondary, with Burns and Thibodeau and Carter coming off the edges, you got Okereke, hopefully they figure the defensive system this plays to his strengths, and you got McFadden, who is coming off a strong year, and you have that defensive front. You're talking about an elite level defense if you go just defense with your first 2 picks.
Sure, I agree.
And you win a lot of games. You can win a lot of games that way.
So your worry is if they go instead force the second round quarterback.
That's what my worry is I don't. So part of me says we got to get a quarterback. You've heard me say repeatedly, we got to take the swing. We've got to get we got to draft somebody at some point. But part of me says, you know what? So don't reach for Milroe at 2. Just get the defensive tackle and then maybe get a quarterback in the third round.
But with that in mind, right? That mindset says you don't take Sanders at 3.
I'm strongly leaning. Look, I
understand what you're saying, but understand what I'm saying. By that logic, then you wouldn't take Sanders at 3, no matter what, because what you just said, that's a home run potential with Carter or Hunter. Sanders is at best a good quarterback with a really good team, but he doesn't bring the elite traits. So he's not a guy who's going to raise everybody else around him. He needs a system in place, and then he'll play well within it. Like, I don't want to say he's like Brock Purdy exactly. That's not, I don't mean it like that, but I mean like the situation. Brock Purdy is Brock Purdy with the San Francisco 49ers. If Brock Purdy had been drafted by the New York Giants in the 7th round, and forget the fact that you think the Giants don't, mold quarterbacks and develop them and stuff. Right. But if he had come on board, there's a good chance Brock Purdy is maybe not even on the roster coming out of training camp, because the system that he played in San Francisco was perfect for him. It seemed to work out really well. The Giants is different. It's a little bit of a colder weather stadium. You're going to play a little bit. It's a different kind of game than what the 49ers play.
I agree with
you. And the players on the 49ers.
His competition would have been Daniel Jones.
Well, I understand that, but that doesn't change how well you play. That just matters how bad the other guy plays. What I'm saying is, in San Francisco, he actually was on a team that had already drafted a guy at the number 3 spot in Trey Lance. There's an example of when you swing really high, if you fail, but the 49ers moved right on. As Go Terps would say, I'll give Go Terps credit, you don't hold on to a mistake. You admit the mistake and you move on. But again, Purdy wasn't the guy. It was Garoppolo ended up getting injured. Lance they had to move on from, and then Purdy kind of got in there and then just took over and they moved on with him. But with another team, he might never have seen the field. We might never have known him. Same with Tom Brady, quite frankly. It worked out in New England very well, but with another team, he might not have ever gotten that opportunity. It was just Belichick thought of something with him, because Brady was not highly sought after coming out in the draft. He did not have elite traits. He didn't even play that well in college. He played some well, then he was benched. He played, benched. His testing at the combine was horrible. So I think Sanders gets a lot of grief for a lot of things that may not be true. I think he gets a lot of over credit for some things that are really manufactured against very average competition. The difference is he doesn't have the elite traits, though, where you could go, man, physically, though, the guy's just amazing.
Mhm.
So I just think by your logic, and I'm not saying you're wrong in any way whatsoever, is that you got to stick to that at 3 as well. You can't just take Sanders just because you take the elite guy. Now, at 2, I have a different opinion, though. In the second round, not 2, second round, I think the defensive tackle position is full enough that even though there might be some elite guys, a little further down, there's going to be still some good guys. Why?
There will be.
Because their wide receivers are going to be a little lower in the first round before they start going. There might be one at the top, maybe 2 mid-range. Then they'll go a little bit lower. The offensive linemen are going to get overdrafted on the tackle side of things because the depth between top and mid and bottom, there's a huge gap between those guys.
Yes.
So I think defensive tackles are going to slide some. There's going to be good defensive tackles later.
Yeah, but that's why I think first-round defensive tackles are going to be there at 2. But I understand your logic. Okay. So
but I will say,
so what do you want to do at 2?
I think the Giants are going to take Jalen Milroe, and I think they're going to take him in the second round.
See, that's where I was, and people are going to be like, Eric, you're all over the place. I was there with you a few days ago. Now I'm starting to think, are you just chasing something that's not there at this point? Yeah, part of me says Milroe might be there in the 3rd round.
He could be.
I don't think Shook is going to be there. Optimus put a list of quarterbacks here. I'm guessing, again, size the guy, but I'm guessing right now for some reason Shook is going way up the boards that the NFL people really.
I don't believe that at all.
You don't believe that?
No,
okay.
There's a couple reasons for that.
Well, he's only had one good season. It's
not just that. We hear this all the time about guys, but then they don't go as high as people keep. Oh,
they did last year.
But those were the 6 guys at the top, though.
No, but 3 of them weren't supposed to go in the second round.
Right, the second round.
Yeah.
Shook at one point was a 7th round guy. Now they're talking about him as moving on. The reason I don't think it's true, he's had a number of injuries and he's a little bit older. Teams tend to not. You're not going to want a guy that might sit for 2 years and he's already on the upper end of the age scale, quarterback wise. They tend to slide down a little bit. I would bet he doesn't go before the 3rd and possibly 4th round.
I will agree with you on Milroe and 2 for the same reason that I would still be okay with Shedeur at 3, in that they simply have to take a swing at some point. Now they may, if these guys weren't on the hot seat, I could make the argument that they should wait till next year.
Oh, sure.
Given the way the draft has fallen,
Agreed.
And maybe they should, and you could build. As one of the gentlemen in the chat said, you can build in the trenches. I can make the argument because this draft is actually pretty darn good on the defensive line, at edge, and in the interior offensive line. This is actually a good draft for the Giants if they want to get better in the trenches.
Yes.
So you could make the argument on paper, in a vacuum, you could make the argument that Giants maybe should ignore the quarterback situation, especially since they have the 2 veterans, build up the trenches, and then next year take another swing. I would still draft a quarterback this year, that like a McCord in the 3rd round or something like that. I would even maybe take a game. Maybe I'm hoping, and this is probably dumb on my part, are there so many holes in Milroe's passing game that we're overvaluing him, and he may actually be there at the top of the 3rd round? I don't know, but I hear what you're saying. I think we still get a really good defensive tackle.
But why
in the 3rd round? But I think there's going to be a 1st-round defensive tackle there for us at 34. That's where I'm thinking.
Why do you think that I think Milroe will be the guy?
I think you see the tool set, the skill, and the mental. When I mean mental, I mean he's a really hard worker. He's a good kid, and he's got the feet. So if you can just get him to,
you're pretty spot on.
Yeah.
With one addendum, one added item. What do the Giants not have right now in their quarterback room? A guy who's mobile.
Right.
Dayball's offense has a mobility piece in it.
Right.
If you can't get that out of the guy starting, you want to have what the Steelers did last year, what the Saints have been able to do a lot, is you want to have a guy that maybe could develop as the quarterback down the road, but is a multifaceted weapon for you that you can bring into the game to use for different things, and you hope will develop as a passer. Jeff Hostetler was a 4th-round pick, and the Giants used him for a gazillion different things back in the 80s. It was
he even blocked a punt.
He blocked a punt. He played specials. It was a different time. I get that, but he was not a passer when he was drafted. But he had a lot of skills that a lot of quarterbacks didn't have. He was very mobile for that.
He was a receiver for them too. Do you remember?
He did that as well.
Yeah.
Jalen Milroe is a plus athlete, period, across the board. You get a guy like him that gives you that added piece that your quarterback room just doesn't have. You can bring him in, kind of like the Steelers kept doing with Justin Fields. Run some plays. Let him develop behind 2 very seasoned veteran quarterbacks. Guys that one of them isn't known as being a great locker room guy, but he certainly has a very professional piece about him. You don't hear about him off the field. He doesn't get in any kind of trouble. He's very steady. He's a bit of a diva, maybe based on what we heard about in Seattle, but in Pittsburgh, it didn't sound like that was the same way. Maybe he's learned a little bit over time. On the other hand, you've got Winston, who's a bit more of a locker room gamester. Guys love him. He's not necessarily the guy you want kind of teaching everything, but those two guys together bring a solid piece that you bring a very mobile guy in like Milroe, let him take some of those other plays. Let him come in and run those short areas. Philadelphia drafted Jalen Hurts not to be a starter by any stretch of the imagination.
Right. They'd Wentz. Yeah.
And they used him, and then he developed. Now, he was a bit of a better passer, I think, than Milroe was, but not by a lot.
Right.
This is a guy that left Alabama because he was being replaced by Tua and went to Oklahoma.
Well, let's be honest. If you draft him there, you're hoping Milroe becomes Lamar Jackson. That's what you're hoping for. You want another Lamar Jackson type.
With the floor being Taysom Hill. The floor is maybe I get a Taysom Hill.
To be a quarterback.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, if you go after a Lamar Jackson, sometimes it's all or nothing. It's either he is or he isn't.
Right.
Because Lamar's he's a thin dude. If you were only going to use him to run, he'd get the shit beat out of him. Milroe is a big dude. He's a thick dude.
He is a big dude.
You can run him, and if at the very worst, because you made a very solid point just a second ago, at the very worst, he's a backup guy that you use multifaceted for years to come, and we're drafting our quarterback next year anyway.
And you could say that, if he's on the roster, you could spend 3-4 years developing him at quarterback at that point. If he's helping out in other ways, you could really have a really long time horizon with him. So I'm not against it.
Sure. And we don't have to agree.
Opportunity. I'm greedy. All right. I'm a greedy guy. I want everything. So I want the defensive tackle at 34 with Carter. But part of me also says, you know what? If we got Hunter, and we had him with Neighbors, and then you had our quarterbacks throwing deep all the time, that other teams would be like, they couldn't deal with that. So I will not have a problem with Hunter, and I've done more research in Hunter's play as both a receiver and as a defensive back, because what I was concerned was, and I've talked about this before, is that his reputation, his ranking was coming more from, he's a two-way guy, and he really wasn't elite at any one of those two things, but it's because he's really good at both. People were pushing them up that high. He really looks like he's really a shutdown corner. And if he's that, and he can be an elite, like Size got him ranked as the number 1 receiver in the draft, at least the last time Miller was a tank. Yep. But Size got him ranked as number 1 receiver in the draft. Now that would drive Go Terps nuts, because he'll be like, you're getting another receiver and you don't have anyone to throw to him. So,
but you do though. You can't say you don't. We do. We have guys who can throw the ball.
But you understand his point. You understand it. I mean,
I understand it last year. I understand it last year. I don't understand it this year. You still
need a guy. You still need a guy when it's like, we've talked about these throws before. There are those moments where Phil Simms or Eli Manning, hell, even Kerry Collins, that made a throw in a situation that was the difference between a win or a loss, and sometimes in a playoff game. And you still got to get that guy.
How many Super Bowls did Eli Manning play in? I know he won them, but how many did he play in?
2.
2. How many Super Bowls has Russell Wilson played in?
2.
We have a guy who knows how to play and win. I'm not saying he's the elite talent.
Right.
But he knows how to play and win. And he has over 350 touchdown passes.
But he's going to be here 1 year.
I understand that. But what's all we're talking about is this year for Daboll, Shane, and those guys. So whoever you draft at 1, you want him to play. That isn't, unless it's a quarterback, you're not drafting that guy to sit. That guy is coming in to play.
Like you believe if they come out of this, look, Shedeur is not the toolsy guy. He's not got the, I mean, in 2025, he's not the athlete that people want in 2025. If you had him back in 1990, you'd say he's way more athletic than the quarterbacks, but he's not the super athlete running the ball. He doesn't have the ideal size. His arm is better than people are saying it is, but it's not a rocket. But he does the things. It was a great, who said it? Somebody just said it. It was this guy that you don't like. It was on ESPN. It was Greenberg.
Mike Greenberg, screw him.
Yeah, but he made a great point. He made a really good point. He said, and I'm not going to say it as eloquently as he said it. He said the things that are most important for a quarterback are the things that Shedeur does well. And it's the processing, it's the reading the defense, it's getting rid of the ball quickly. And I know people say he takes sacks. But he does get rid when he wants to throw, he has a quick release and he gets rid of the ball. He sees the field. He's a very, very accurate quarterback. And he's got that, and people say he moves around a lot, but he's got that Tony Romo aspect to his game that used to drive me nuts, is when you thought you had him sacked and you thought you had him, he would get out of that somehow, even though when you had him wrapped up, and he would still complete the pass. He's got that part of his game. So if he's like a Tony Romo type player, you take that at 3. I know people are going to say, well, he doesn't fit the mold. You want a winning quarterback who can get you, who's accurate and the leader, and he's got that too. He's got the leader, the charisma, the mojo. So if they come out, the Giants come out of this process, if Daboll and Shane and these guys come out of the process, and remember, they really like Jaden Daniels, they really like May. I don't understand why they botched it on Daniel Jones. That doesn't make sense to me. But we've speculated maybe Miro was involved in there. But if they come out of this process and say Shedeur can lead us, I can still see them taking him at 3. And I know what everyone else is saying, and they say, well, that doesn't help you this year, but they still have to think about the next 10 years.
Sure,
because
I agree
they've got to catch the Eagles and they've got to catch the Commanders. And right now, I don't see the quarterbacks that we have competing seriously for the division title. I just don't. I don't see it.
Let's keep it somewhat tight. So we'll go another 17 minutes. We'll go to 8. We'll go to 8 o'clock.
Right. Yeah, my wife will appreciate that.
So let's play the game now. We'll play your game because you didn't want to play my game. And
what's your game? Wait, what was your game?
I want to do the mock draft, and you said if scenarios do this.
Oh, I still do it. I just think it's more interesting to pick the Giants related stuff.
So before I get to what I was going to do, I want to let folks know. I don't know who knows about this particular thing or whatever, so I'm going to say it now. So you go look it up, and then you'll know next week. If you're familiar with a show called So Bad It's Good on YouTube, SBIG, Jason Brandt's the host of it. He has a couple other guys that are always on. His wife, Erin, is on. They make fun of movies. They put B movies on. They watch it, and they just a lot of
riff tracks.
They don't voice over it. They're commenting about it during it's
right.
I find it hysterical.
Right.
Take a look at that show. They have a shit ton of followers on YouTube, 350,000, I believe. Jason Brandt and I believe his wife, Erin, are going to be guests on our show next week. Now, it's not necessarily football related. They are Steelers fans. So I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. I just reached out to them. They agreed to come on. So I thought we'll play, because you know what? BBI, love Mystery Science Theater. Riff Tracks was basically an offshoot of Mystery Science Theater. But So Bad It's Good is hysterical. They're awesome. Jason Brandt's an author. He does horror novels and other stuff, but very funny. They're cool. What I thought was really interesting, most recently they did a show, Ben Roethlisberger. Yes, NFT. That's what I'm thinking we should start doing. We need an NFT night, a non-football, but we need an NFP, non-football podcast. So they had Ben Roethlisberger over to their house, and he came and watched the movies. He riffed on it. By the way, I didn't even freaking recognize him at first. He looks so different. That surgery on his face after his motorcycle accident really changed how he looked. But anyway, that being said, they're going to be guests on our show next week, and I believe it's going to be on Monday. We're going to record it Monday night. I confirmed just a little while ago.
It's going to be next Monday?
It's going to be next Monday. It's a done deal. It's a done deal. So they're going to be on. So look up So Bad It's Good, SBIG, Jason Brandt on YouTube. Look it up. Prepare ahead of time. It's pretty funny shit. And we can ask them because there's a lot of ex-football players were B-movie actors. You and I can do B-movie stuff. We're pretty good with that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it'll be fun. It'll be a fun little thing, a little bit a different version. Anyway,
what is that one that I like? The Samurai Cop.
Oh my God, there's hysterical. My favorite. They play this line over and over again whenever somebody asks a question, like, "Hey, where's so and so?" Because in the movie, if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, it's not Samurai Cop. Shit, they do a lot of Samurai Cop. Have you ever seen Birdemic?
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah,
okay. So they take a line for Birdemic. Birdemic, whenever they're looking for somebody, they go back and put the clip in from Birdemic where he's like, "Hey, where's Becky?" And he goes, "She's taking a shit." The most weird line in the history of movies.
Birdemic's got the longest opening drive.
Oh my God!
The
driving scene.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we should get back on football.
And the star of the movie, who literally looks like he just learned how to walk the week before.
Yes.
So anyway, that being said, your version of the game we were going to play, I wanted to do a mock draft, which we will do eventually. You wanted to do scenarios, so let's do the scenarios. Tennessee goes Ward.
Yep.
Cleveland's on the clock.
Oh, you're going to put me on a spot.
I'm putting you on a spot first. Cleveland's on the clock.
Oh, no.
They go Carter, Hunter, Sanders, and whatever else you think is there, or possible trade down. What do you do in that scenario?
Ward, I'm going to answer this question, but you know what was interesting? They did a mock draft today on the Giants show, and they had Schmelk picking the Giants picks. They didn't have who's the draft guy that they have? Tony, I can't think of his name, but I thought they would have him, but they had the Giants employee pick, and he said, "I'm going to pick who I would pick, but not who I think the Giants would pick." And he was talking about between Shedeur and Hunter, and he picked Hunter. And I thought that was interesting. He thought, now he doesn't know what they're going to do, but he thought they were going to pick Shedeur as the Giants employee. I'm operating under the I'm going to play it safe because I'm still operating under the assumption that all right, let me put it this way. I'll tell you who I'm going to pick. Am I picking as the owner of the New York Giants? Me.
Would you do?
I would pick Hunter
over Sanders.
Yes.
If an offer was given to you to trade down and it included a 1 next year, would you take that deal? And how far would you go down? How far would you be willing to move down on the list?
If it's a 1, I would take it but it would depend. Like, and I'm not going back to like the 20s. I'm not going that far back. But
I'm going to show what Neil just put on here because I saw this too. If we go Armin Membu at 3, everybody in the Giants organization should be fired.
You know what's funny is he's been sneaking up on a ton of mock drafts. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, but we spent true, but we've just spent a shit ton of money overall on getting guys back and bringing and solidifying our line. Free agency last year. Yes, he's an eventual starter, but where are you going to play him? You going to play him?
I can't see the Giants doing that.
You can't.
I'm not saying they won't draft an offensive lineman. I can't see them drafting an offensive lineman in the top 10.
You can't do that at 3. You'd have to move down, and then that becomes possible.
This is going to drive people nuts. The guy that I would target in the first round if I was trading down is that tight end.
Tyler Warren, which
I like him a
I
lot.
will put. I'll share. This was just shared.
Oh,
Um,
there you
I
go.
I agree
Donald,
with
you and
you
I
now.
are on the same page.
So I'll do the same scenario since I gave the scenario. I'll
wait,
give my answer.
let me do with the caveat. The only caveat is this, and I know this sounds like a cop out. If they bring in Shador, you know that thing where in the combine where they sat down with them and they did all the
Sure.
great film work in the 10 minutes. If he comes in as a 30 visit, and remember they've sent people out there 8 times and all this other stuff. But if they are absolutely convinced that this guy is a processing machine, then I have no problem with them taking Shador. I know a lot of Giants fans have, but they've got to get another quarterback in the room. So they got to do it this year or they got to do it next year. And the odds that you're going to get that guy in the second or third round this year isn't good. It's just not good. I mean, it's like what 20% chance, maybe tops. So I don't have a problem doing that. Hunter's the no-brainer at that point, and then you can think he could play wide receiver. So people are going to say, "Well, what you got Banks? What are you going to do with him?" Well, number one, you don't know how Banks is going to eventually end up. It's interesting that Russell Wilson, by the way, singled out Banks today. He said he thought he was a heck of a player. I thought that was interesting.
He picked the shit out of him during the game.
But then you have a shutdown corner if Banks. If you have a shutdown corner of Banks, you have a shutdown corner if Banks doesn't work out. But so I think he's the number 1 receiver in the draft. So then you've got like a hellacious number of weapons now to because you're gonna. So Hunter's to me is the safe, and I think you and I have been underrating Hunter. I think you and I have been.
I won't say. No, you're right. My problem was the Giants at the time. We had no quarterback. So I'm like, you can't change your team adding a defensive back whose physical stature is decent, not great. He's not going to be able to change things as your team is just getting picked apart because your offense never does anything. Well, Now we have 2 quarterbacks. Now we have 2 veteran quarterbacks. We're at least going to be average. You would think.
Hopefully.
I'm going to ask you this because you're a little bit older, like myself. So some of the other folks aren't going to necessarily know this. A lot of people try to match Hunter to another NFL player. Some people try to pick Dion because Dion became a receiver later on. He played some receiver and punt returner and whatever, but he was a DB. I personally see Hunter as Roy Green. What are your thoughts on that?
As a receiver?
As both. Roy Green was a defensive back.
Yeah, I only remember Roy as a receiver, and as a receiver, he was amazing.
But he was a DB before that. He was
I know that. I remember that now that you bring it up, but I didn't remember that. I mean, now that you bring it up, I remember it, but I didn't. When I as a fan, I only remember him as a wide receiver, and he was a terror. He was an absolute terror to cover, and he single-handedly saved the. Did he? No, he almost. Remember, there was a game where. I'd have to go back. There was a game. He killed the Redskins in a game, and he just single-handedly. He was an awesome receiver.
I don't remember at one point. I know it doesn't matter, but at one point the Cardinals had 2 receivers. Green was on one side. Who was the receiver on the other?
In the backfield, they had Stump Mitchell and OJ Anderson. Stump Mitchell and OJ Anderson, and the other receiver I can't remember. But
I feel like he was an ex-Chief player. I want to say he was an ex-Chief player.
And Lawrence Taylor basically destroyed Neil Lomax's career because Neil Lomax was an awesome quarterback, but there were a handful of quarterbacks that LT mentally destroyed, and Neil Lomax was one of them. Ron Jaworski was another. I know Ron was getting older, but LT ruined Ron, and he ruined Neil Lomax, and he physically ruined Joe Theismann. I still won't watch that play. I mean, when that happened live, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, that was bad. That was bad.
Yeah. So I guess, well, what would you do?
So that's a good thing. I would want the trade, or I either take Hunter or I take the trade.
Yeah, but where? How far down?
I wouldn't go below 11. I wouldn't go below 11.
And is anyone really going to give up a number 1 for Hunter?
Oh, I would think that's quite possible.
For non-quarterback.
Yes. Think of it this way. if you're San Francisco and you do re-sign Brock Purdy, which apparently the word is now they're getting closer to a deal, that's a team that if you jumped up to get Hunter, you get a two-way player if you want to. So you can use them two ways, and they're very unique team. They maximize players' abilities. They use them to the nth degree. So let's say San Francisco did that. They're going to give a 1 to come that far up. Jacksonville from 5 to 3. It would normally still cost you a 1. Chicago gave a 1 years ago to move up just to take the idiot quarterback from North Carolina, and they ended up regretting that.
Let's do something a little more realistic. What if Jacksonville says they'll give you their 2?
What else? I need more than that.
No, they say 2.
Nah, you need 2 next year. So switch.
No. 2. Their second-round draft pick this year.
I still need more than that. You got to give me something next year.
Well, remember, who's between Jacksonville and us?
New England.
That's it, right?
Correct.
So in my scenario, if Shedeur gets past the Browns, Shedeur still sitting there where Jacksonville picks, and you've picked up another second-round pick. So I'm just saying, if you really wanted Shedeur, maybe you deal with the Jaguars, because New England's not going to take them. Now you're running the risk that someone could trade up with New England.
Wait, you're saying New England won't take
Shedeur?
Hunter?
No,
Shedeur. So yeah,
I'm saying if you wanted, let me put it this way: would you more strongly consider Shedeur if you could get him plus an extra high second round draft pick, or you would still just take Hunter?
If I knew I could get Shedeur, now you're counting on that the Patriots won't trade down, knowing that both Carter and Hunter aren't there.
Right.
That's a tough one because I want more than the 2.
Oh, sure. Everybody wants.
But give me something next year, though, and I think that's pretty reasonable. You're not
going to get a 1. I don't think
you might not get a 1, but give me a 2 next year too.
Just to move up 2 spots.
That's a pretty big jump when the guy is Hunter. I don't have to trade with you. You want him.
That's a tough scenario because, again, think of what you could do at 2 with another high second round draft pick in this draft. Then you can get an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman, and you might be able to get your quarterback.
And it was Pat Tilley, by the way. Everybody in the room is right. It was Pat Tilley. Sorry.
How come my messages are still? I didn't hit the down.
The messages for me have been weird, so that's why I haven't been posting back to everybody, and I've only been sharing. It's not every time I go to share a message, it locks up, and then I have to get out of it to come back. So I've been able to highlight you guys, but I haven't been messaging back within the thing. So
Dave, I kind of felt like you did, but the more I look into him, the people that I like talk about him, I'm like, not.
So let's reverse that. Let's say instead, let's use the 2 quarterbacks. I mean, we could go a little past 8. It's fine. Well, not much, because I want to keep this.
My wife's going to kill me.
Okay, so we won't go more than 805. Count that. If quarterbacks go Ward Sanders.
We're getting off. We're getting off in a sec.
Mrs. BBI is going to be back. Mrs. BBI is going to message me.
We're getting off.
Message me going, get off the show. So if it goes Ward Sanders, now to me, we are in the catbird seat. You've got both Carter and Hunter. We can ask for a premium for any trade up that somebody wants to do.
Wait, if Shedeur goes.
If both quarterbacks go 1-2, boom, boom.
Right. Oh, if they go 1-2. And say we didn't want Shedeur, we're golden. Okay, we're pissed off we didn't get Ward, but we're golden.
Right.
And so, what's your question?
I'm saying, what do you do there?
Carter.
We've got the option of either one of those 2, or you could potentially.
As long as the medicals on Carter are all right, I'm taking Carter. I think I'm still old school. I think a pass rusher makes everything behind you better.
Correct.
But I will say what you said is starting to come up as I read more on Carter. There are issues with him in run defense.
Yes.
So,
but you've already got 2 guys that start. So if you just rotate him in, if he's just coming in to change the passing game, this is a guy that could get 15 sacks and not even be starting.
Right. Well, and part of me would be right. So there's a bunch of ton of defensive tackles in this draft, and some of them are 3 technique, but others are more 1 technique, like Dexter Lawrence. Part of me says get another one of these big, huge Dexter Lawrence guys, and there's a bunch of them in this draft too.
Sure.
And then put those 2 guys together, and then just have the guys come off the edge. So I think the game's changing again. I think we're starting to see, certainly in one of the teams in our division, the Eagles, you're seeing more teams starting to commit to the run now. So I think we need to start thinking about getting guys in the interior defensive line that are just so good at the run, like the Ohio State defensive tackle. If he somehow managed to get to our pick at 34, some people have said, well, he's not really a 3 technique, but he is a monster against the run. So if you put him next to, people run away from him. He's so good against the run. If you put him next to Dexter, and then you also had Carter and Burns and Thibodeau coming off the edge, that's what I'm envisioning right now. Then you're starting to be like the Eagles. Then you're going to be like the Eagles front. You're like, we can't run against these guys and we can't throw against these guys. So part of me says, screw the quarterback. Let's just get really good on defense.
I'm gonna share this on the screen. Neil, this has kind of been debunked by a bunch of people that it's not.
That got debunked today.
I'll say this though, I actually have a feeling that part of it is true. I've been kind of thinking all along. You kept talking about when you looked at Myles Garrett's media piece where he said, "I know what they're planning to do."
Right. That when I saw that, I'm like,
I don't believe it's quarterback that he knows what they're going to do per se. I think he knows what they're doing, how they're going to do it, not who they're going to do it with. But I do think that all along their plan was to beef up that defense to give him some help, because that's what he's missing is some help. Carter is a logical, and right now Adam Schefter is saying that the Browns are kind of really zeroing in on Carter.
Schefter's no shit.
He just plays whatever. He's what agents feed him shit, and he runs with it, and it becomes a mouth for the agents. That being said,
one thing one day, and the next day he'll say the opposite.
That being said, Jane Slater posted on X a little while ago. She just came back from vacation apparently, and she covers the Cowboys. And one of the things she said is, I know that Micah Parsons and Jerry Jones have had a number of conversations about a new contract.
Mm-hmm.
But they are nowhere near getting one done.
Hmm.
I think if Dallas and Cleveland are talking trade, it is Dallas and Cleveland for Micah Parsons, not for Dak Prescott. And because the Cowboys need to get a new contract to Parsons. If the Browns can give Parsons the contract, they make that deal, the Cowboys could move up. They can get Shedeur if they want to. They could get Abdul Carter and basically bring in the next Penn State guy to replace the guy they just traded.
Well, I get weird people showing up in my Twitter feed, and I had Des Bryant show up in my Twitter feed today.
Nice.
And 19 hours ago, and this was earlier today, he said, I think Dallas is going to get Shedeur. And this was way before this guy's report came out.
It would make sense because look at who they hired for their head coach.
Yeah.
If there's not a guy that more than likely is a 1 year and done head coach, it's Dallas. And if you got Shedeur, who's coming in as the head coach? The almighty, lovable Deion Sanders, who played for the Cowboys, the free agent signing that got them into Super Bowls. Who's coming to Dallas?
But a lot of people have said the financials on this make no sense. They can't do it. They can't trade Dak. But you think it's Micah, but
here's the thing. You absolutely can trade Dak. It's called redoing the contract and making a trade. There is nothing in the NFL that prevents anybody from doing whatever the hell they want. Look at what Denver did. They cut Russell Wilson. They didn't post June 1st him. They cut him. They gut him right out of the building and ate a shit ton of cap dead money in that year. Why? Because it's funny money. They were able to figure out how to get around it. It didn't stop them. The Saints were $50 million over the cap 3 weeks ago. Somehow they were able to sign some players recently.
Yeah.
It means nothing. It would cost them, but if they redid the contract, they move them up. The Browns are going to get some sort of relief for the fact that Watson hasn't been able to play, and we've got roughly, we'll give it 2 minutes tops that we'll finish this up.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so much about this. Back to where we started all with this, I'll say this: the wrap it up. Mrs. BBI, we're almost done.
Wrap it up.
Luckily, my wife is busy with one of our kids has a horse riding lesson, so she's busy. We started this Wilson Watson. Is it ideal? It's not where we thought it was going to be when January started, and we thought Matthew Stafford. Then it became, wow, it seems like it's Aaron Rodgers. There was a point we did think it was Russell Wilson, and then that kind of died down. And then out of nowhere, we signed Watson, where we almost thought, they're probably going to sign Flacco and then maybe get Wilson or Rodgers.
Yeah.
Instead, we got Watson and Wilson. So we went with the W's there. Maybe they just ran out of alphabet, and that's what we ended up with. Either way, we've got 2 veteran quarterbacks with basically 500 plus touchdown passes on their resume. Our quarterback room is the best it's been in forever. Is it the best in the NFL? No. Is it the best of these 2 guys in their careers? No. But for us, it's the best that we've had. And if you can just be competent, look at what you got in 22. All the Giants need right now is competent. They got to fill some other things. We still need some superstars.
But John, can this team win a division game?
Yes.
Dallas,
and I'm going to say Dallas and Washington is going to come back to the fold a little bit. It's just
they've gotten better. They got Tunzel. They got
Tunzel led the NFL in offensive lineman.
I know, but he's still a good player. And they got the receiver from the 49ers,
who's on the downside of his career, and the Niners wanted to get rid of him.
Again, you're more negative on this.
All I'm saying is that to expect that Washington's going to be double-digit wins again right away, they have a lot of other holes. Right. They won some games fairly luckily. They beat us very luckily 2 times. One could have been. The other one was definitely ours to win, and we didn't. They beat Chicago because Chicago couldn't stop a goddamn Hail Mary. So there were some wins last year that were kind of So to expect them to kind of come back a little bit, their quarterback's really good. But Dallas, on the other hand, they just seem to be a team that doesn't know where the hell they're going. They spend more time dealing with individual contract pieces while the rest of the team seems to be crumbling, and Jones doesn't seem to even notice.
And they lost Cooper Rush, who are 2-0 against us, right?
So that helps us. Why don't we sign him? So we'll
wrap it up.
Yeah, unless you have something you want to drop here at the end, I think we'll call it.
I think we're good. And there's still a lot. I'm glad we did a show today because there are all these thoughts that are in my head about what happened and what the could-haves, would-haves, what we should do. Should we still go for a quarterback? Should we just beef up the defense and the offensive line? There's a lot to still process and digest here. I will say this, and I'm a sucker for this. I'm not a big Russell Wilson fan, but his press conference today kind of fired me up. I was like, hey, he knows the team. He's confident. He thinks he's. So part of me was like, as a fan today, I was like, I can't wait to go watch the whole thing because again, I understand what it is. It's a press conference. It doesn't matter. But part of me just wants to feel. And I know one thing I did want to mention is, without a doubt, Giants fans are suffering from PTSD right now. We expect the worst all the time. You see it on BBI, but you see it way more on X. There's so many fans that the Giants could get Patrick Mahomes, and we would think we're going to stink. That's how bad the PTSD is right now. So I think there's a lot of positive. The problem is we're in the division with the Eagles right now, and we've got to catch the Eagles, not just this year. We got to catch them 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now. So we got to get back. We got to get the quarterback in the building at some point. And I get what Dave was saying earlier. How does the quarterback help us now? It doesn't. But you got to think about, and quarterback can come next year, but you got to get the quarterback in the building.
Right. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Again, first off, I want to say thank you to everybody. We crossed the 1,000 subscriber barrier, and moving forward, we have bigger plans than that. We have more things. You may have noticed, may not have noticed. I was able to hook it up. It was streaming on X at the same time. Facebook, for some reason, said it didn't go through, so I got to figure out why that didn't work. The chat pieces, we're trying to do as many of these live as we can. We record when we have guests. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to then bring, but some people will bring on live. So, but either way, we've grown a lot. We plan on doing a lot more, so really appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. I promise we won't bug you. You won't get anything from us other than, hey, the show's coming up.
You're
so
right.
Other than that, but
we don't know how to do that even if we wanted to.
Right. It's not like I don't have a full-time job and other stuff that I'm doing. So I appreciate. I saw some messages in here. I'll just say I'm doing okay. I was told I'm not allowed to talk about it on social media or anything else. I'm in the process of dealing with the other insurance company. So they don't want me to talk about the accident, the injury, or anything like that. So getting there, but it does not feel well today. When they were putting the new cast on it, I was like, okay, that hurts. So we'll see. But the screw's about that long. So yeah, it was a little bigger than I thought. Anyway, that being said, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you again real soon.